power rarely appears fragile while it is still functioning. It issues orders, protects interests, and projects confidence, even as the space for flexible response begins to narrow. The United States and China entered the 21st century as powerful authorities capable of shaping global systems, yet their competition revealed a different form of pressure. Not immediate weakness, but the difficulty of adjusting without appearing to surrender control. Their confrontation became a struggle between influence and constraint, where each side remained capable of action while finding fewer simple choices. This period mattered because it showed how major powers can become limited not by the absence of power, but by the weight of preserving it. At the beginning of this century, both governments operated from positions of expanding authority. China, after joining the World Trade Organization in 2001, accelerated industrial growth through state-directed development, infrastructure expansion, and strategic economic planning. The Communist Party maintained centralized political control while integrating deeply into global markets. The United States, supported by military reach, financial influence, and alliances across Europe and Asia, remained the dominant global power. Yet, the relationship between the two authorities changed as economic dependence became connected to strategic competition. By the 2010s, decisions became increasingly shaped by the need to protect credibility. Washington questioned whether existing policies had strengthened a future competitor, while Beijing viewed foreign pressure as an attempt to limit its rise. Trade disputes, technology restrictions, and security concerns transformed cooperation into managed confrontation. Both governments continued negotiating, regulating, and directing resources, but each response carried a political cost. The first signs of constraint appeared not through failure but through hesitation. The United States could pressure Chinese companies and restrict access to advanced technology, but every restriction also affected global supply chains and American firms. China could strengthen domestic alternatives and reduce dependence on foreign systems, but doing so required time, resources, and confidence that replacement would succeed. The available choices remained powerful, yet none were simple. Workers, manufacturers, and local officials adjusted to changing policies while waiting for clearer signals from national authorities. Investment decisions became exercises in uncertainty as businesses attempted to anticipate which direction government strategy would take next. This created a pattern where both powers increasingly responded to each other's actions, rather than shaping events independently. In Washington, different administrations reached similar conclusions about strategic competition, even when their methods differed. In Beijing, officials emphasized self-reliance and national resilience as external pressure increased. The language of security expanded into economic decisions, and economic decisions became tied to political legitimacy. The difficulty for each authority was that adaptation itself could appear as vulnerability. A softer approach risked criticism from domestic audiences and rivals. A harder approach risked creating the very separation both sides claimed they wanted to manage carefully. The result was a narrowing middle ground, where compromise became harder to explain and confrontation became easier to justify. Administrative systems also began reflecting this tension. Governments that manage large economies must coordinate countless institutions, industries, and regional interests. A strategic shift announced at the highest level does not immediately become reality across every department. Regulations require interpretation, companies require planning, and officials must balance national objectives with local consequences. Regional authorities and businesses absorbed the uncertainty of changing rules, adjusting operations while waiting to understand whether temporary measures would become permanent direction. Technology competition made the pressure more visible. Advanced semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and telecommunications became symbols of broader authority. For the United States, protecting technological advantages became linked to maintaining strategic influence. For China, developing independent capabilities became linked to national security and political confidence. The issue was no longer only about individual companies or products. It became a question of whether each authority could control the foundations of future power. Yet control became increasingly difficult because the global system itself remained interconnected. Restrictions created incentives for adaptation. Adaptation created new competition. Competition produced additional restrictions. Each government attempted to preserve leverage, while also limiting unintended consequences. The cycle did not remove power from either side, but it reduced the freedom to change direction. Citizens, investors, and institutions across both countries experienced the effects through shifting expectations rather than sudden disruption. Decisions about production, technology, and cooperation increasingly depended on reading signals from governments whose priorities were becoming more closely tied to strategic competition. The pressure extended beyond economics. Military planning in the Indo-Pacific, alliances, diplomatic relationships, and questions surrounding Taiwan increased the importance of signaling strength. For both governments, perception became part of authority itself. Appearing uncertain could encourage challenges. Appearing inflexible could reduce options. Maintaining credibility required constant demonstration of control. This was the deeper constraint. Powerful authorities often depend not only on their ability to act, but on their ability to convince others that their actions remain effective. When every adjustment must also defend reputation, decisions become slower and more carefully managed. The system continues moving, but each movement requires greater calculation. The strain also appeared in the institutions surrounding each authority. Governments rely on networks of ministries, experts, corporations, and diplomatic channels to translate intention into action. As competition intensified, those networks faced competing demands. Move quickly enough to protect national interests, but cautiously enough to avoid economic disruption or diplomatic escalation. The challenge was not simply deciding what to do, but maintaining agreement inside systems where many actors carried different risks. Officials responsible for implementation often worked between broad strategic goals and immediate practical realities. A policy designed to demonstrate strength abroad could create uncertainty at home, while a measure intended to reduce vulnerability could introduce new dependencies elsewhere. Authority remained present, but coordination became a more demanding exercise. This is where mutual constraint became visible. Each power influenced the other, limiting not only the opponent's choices, but also its own. The struggle was not a simple contest between expansion and decline. It was a continuous negotiation between ambition, reputation, and the practical limits of governing complex societies. The visible limit was not the loss of capability, but the reduction of flexibility. Both governments still possessed enormous resources, yet the range of choices available without political consequences became narrower. Confidence remained, but certainty became more difficult to maintain. The challenge was no longer whether either power could act. It was whether either could adjust without creating new pressures. The United States and China remain active authorities, still capable of shaping events and responding to challenges. But the competition between them reveals a quieter transformation. Power can remain intact, while the ability to move freely begins to diminish. The institutions continue, the decisions continue, and the strategies continue. What changes is the space between decision and consequence, where every choice carries more weight than before. Authority often appears strongest when its choices still exist, yet history often turns during the moments when those choices begin to narrow. If these questions continue to matter, Timeless Questions explores power, systems, and human experience across time.